four-time Emmy-nominated producer, Frank Pace, and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor. Today's guest, Pulitzer Prize winning photographer, John Filo.
My brother Frankie, how are you today, pal?
Hot.
You're hot.
Yeah.
What do you mean, you pick 7 winners in a row? You know, that's the way I used to be. I'm hot.
You're hot.
And my bookies say, don't worry, I'll cool you off. What do you like today?
Yeah. Well, I do like our guest, John Filo, today.
Wow.
52 years ago today, he won a Pulitzer Prize for the famous photo of Mary Ann Vecchio screaming while kneeling over 20-year-old Jeffrey Miller. So at Kent State.
Kent State Massacre. The Kent State Massacre.
But we'll get to that in a few moments. Let's lighten the mood a little bit today.
We all lost a few people at Dunkirk. Let's have a couple of
want to talk about Elon Musk?
Yeah, you want to talk about Elon Musk? Why is everybody in a pissed off mood and up in arms? I want to get Derek in on this too. Why is everybody so pissed off that he bought Twitter? I mean, is it because he's going to eliminate the censorship on it? Is that what everybody's pissed off about?
Well, we'll let Derek talk to this.
Yeah, I want to hear Derek.
I prefer the question to be phrased a little bit differently, or a lot differently. So you should phrase it how you talked about it at lunch, and then I'll respond.
Well, we can't even remember what we had for lunch, and we had lunch 45 minutes ago. So please just answer the fucking question.
So instead of being a dick, Derek,
yeah.
Why should we be upset or not upset about Elon Musk buying Twitter?
Well, I would like to answer that question with a question. Why are people
Why can't you just answer the fucking question?
Because it's better to answer it with it's totally better.
Holy, you see why we never go to him early in the show? we go to him late in the show so he can. All right.
Can you swim?
Oh yeah.
Well, we'll have Fred Clare on to talk about that next week. Okay.
So never mind.
No, come on. So why should we be upset or not upset? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What's your take?
I think it's good. We have one of the smartest people in the modern history that will be in charge of a platform that allows for people to essentially disseminate information however they want. And I mentioned something at lunch about Eric Weinstein and his brother Brett started a platform for a new party on Twitter, a completely new party, and Twitter banned that account for false reasons. So that is one of the reasons why somebody like Elon Musk would take over, is because that was a very shady situation that Twitter did, and I don't think it's a good idea to have speech censored.
Now, it wasn't that easy. You answered the question directly and without beating around the bush, without answering a question with a question, without anything.
Yeah. Is this
a cogent, well thought out answer?
I don't know about that, but you can do better.
So does this mean because Musk bought Twitter that we're giving it the title of the most important form of communication in the 21st century?
I think it's already been that.
Really?
Not Twitter per se. Well, maybe.
Is it that influential? I mean, it elected a president. We could make an argument that it elected a president. No?
Yeah, but so social media in its time, in its early phases, elected Obama, and then the current, and then later on it elected Trump. Who knows what it will be in 2022, 2028, 2032. There'll be another form of social media.
Another form of...
I mean, like TikTok and Instagram are already bigger than Twitter by far.
Yeah, but they're disseminating some of this. They're disseminating some of this information. Some of this sort of political information, but they're not as. They don't have the same.
As they get more powerful, they're going to change their communication flow.
Sure.
Let me make just an historical reference real quick, just because, like Lincoln used photography. Photography was the first big form of mass communication.
And Kennedy used television.
FDR used the radio.
Right.
So Lincoln used photography, FDR used the radio, Kennedy used television. You go into Obama, the internet.
Yeah.
He was all over the internet, well ahead of McCain, or
Right.
and now Trump with Twitter.
Right.
So, do you think TikTok, Instagram has got the capabilities of electing a president? Or do you?
It very well might by 2022,
I think it has to do with the audience.
2024.
I think the audience, right? Maybe 2024. I don't think that they will.
You tell me the audience is more serious on Twitter.
It may be another form of social media that is not even available now.
We might not even be here.
It's
Yeah.
some kid's mind in Harvard dorm room.
Well, apparently Elon Musk doesn't feel like that, right? Because he bought Twitter. So does that mean to him that he thinks this is the definitive move? I mean,
Well, who knows that he's going to own Twitter a year from now?
Well, I want to be on his team. He's a pretty bright guy.
I want you to go on one of his rocket ships. Get rid of you forever. That's what I want. That's what I want. I'm wasting my Saturdays here talking this nonsense with you two guys. I could be asleep.
You could be asleep doing something productive.
Well, I'd like to place the responsibility in the hands of of YouTube, and go back to what I said earlier at lunch. You guys are responsible. Billy, what do you refer to elections as?
Auctions.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so you guys have the financial power to elect presidents.
Billy doesn't have the financial power to vote for
to get his
president.
subscription to the Washington Post. Never mind to elect the president.
So,
So I don't know. I mean, but Musk is actually saying, I guess, that this is what he thinks is going to be the most important form of influence peddling in the next, I would think, a decade anyway. Otherwise, he wouldn't be doing it. Would he be spending that kind of money?
I don't know. I don't know what motivates him.
But you think it's going to
He's-
be a better platform because of Musk?
He told the UN, if you give me $6 billion, I'll get rid of world hunger. They gave him some money, and he didn't get rid of world hunger.
they didn't give him $6 billion. Though.
Yeah, well, he didn't get rid of world hunger.
Let's not refer to him as Jesus.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? He's a businessman, and he's a more than anything.
Believe me, I'm not referring to him as Jesus.
No, I know, but what I mean by that is
I'm not referring to Jesus as Jesus.
me either.
I got a big thing with that. Like there's all these laws that are going around right now. Don't teach sexuality in schools to anybody under the third grade. I get that. I don't see why a teacher should be talking about sexuality, somebody below the third grade. But they shouldn't be pushing religion either, if
Right.
that's the case. These are very fertile minds. And
Yeah, we used to.
what do you teach them?
In first grade, we were in first grade. We used to go to catechism class.
Yeah.
At the church
Yeah.
as part of our curriculum.
How'd that work out for them? I went to catechism class too. As
Yeah.
soon as you get old enough, it's like you say, hey, all right,
on.
I'm done with that.
Come on.
Yeah, I'm done with that.
Imaginary man in the sky.
Yeah, I know.
Come on.
But it's a white guy with a beard.
The Santa Claus.
Oh,
So-
he's skinny.
so
He's
Santa
skinny,
Claus.
and he's got blue eyes.
Black Santa.
What's wrong with that?
I want to see. That's what I want to see. Anyway, enough of this.
Yes,
Let's
enough
go
of
to
this.
our guest, the Pulitzer Prize winning photographer, John Filo.
John Filo.
Derek, can we get us John Filo, please?
Yep.
Hey, John, how are you, my friend?
Fine. How are you both?
Good. That's
Three of you, actually.
That's Billy O'Connor, and that's Derek Harris.
Hello, John. Pleasure to know you, pal. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for including me, John. I appreciate it.
So, John,
Thank you.
today is May 4th. Where were you 52 years ago today?
May 10th. Well, actually, it all depends what time of day you ask. Yes, there was definitely a tent in Kent, Ohio, and probably it's one of those days that affects you for the rest of your life. That's where it could start, actually, there.
It was probably, I guess, the definitive day in your life. Would you not say that's true? I mean, did you know you were going to go on to be a journalist for the rest of your life until that day?
Well, I was studying to be a journalist. I've been working since high school at a local newspaper as the summer replacement photographer. And I come from Western PA, steel town, working class family. And the family says, if you don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer, we really won't pay for much of your education. And so what had happened is I went into pre-med. I loved the life sciences. I was horrible at math and organic chemistry. And I had this portfolio of photos ever since I was 18. And I walked over to the School of Fine and Professional Arts and walked into the journalism department. Had this wonderful dean and took a look at my photos and said, "Well, you could start next semester. Matter of fact, do you need a job?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, we need a lab assistant. Can you do that?" And I said, "Sure." And so I think for $1.33 an hour, which was minimum wage back then, I was able to stay in school, And then after the first, we were on trimesters, and after the first few weeks, I had to go to him and I said, "Look, as kind as you were to me, I still can't afford school." And he said, "Well, what would it take?" And he said, I said, "The 20 hours a week is not making it." He says, "Well, if I make you a full-time employee, can you do it?" And I went, "Sure." And so that's what he did. He let me be a full-time student and a full-time employee. And that was hard to come by, but that made my life very simple. So I was a lab assistant, working my way through school and a degree towards photo illustration.
Now, you were a freshman then? You were 18?
No, by this time I was a junior. Well, on May 4th I was a senior, but I knew I'd have another year at least of to get the right credits in the right places to get my degree. And so I was a senior. I should have graduated that year, but I was nowhere close to graduation because of the college change. And so the basic thing was that I used to work every once in a while, cover a demonstration for the Akron Beacon Journal, and send in your film with a student reporter. And but then I needed those images part of classwork. And so I remember calling up the Akron Beacon Journal and talking to an old curmudgeon photo guy that ran the photo lab. And he said, "Well, I got a lot of film down here. I don't know which one's yours." And I said, "How can you do that? How can you run a photo lab and not know whose film is where and that?" And I said, "All right, forget the film. Do I have a paycheck coming? I saw the pictures. They were in your paper. And the demonstrations, all going on all the time."
This is before May 4th, correct?
No, before May 4th. And so it was very frustrating. I didn't get paid. They paid the wrong person, and I never got my film. So I only tell that story because it becomes evident on May 4th of what I had to do.
And they had demonstrations been going on May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd.
I left campus. I had to go. Part of my senior portfolio. Well, I was in advanced photography, and one of my projects was large format macro photography of jewelry. And I envisioned this stuff. The only thing that had color at that time of year was moss and teaberry in the mountains of Pennsylvania that I was familiar with. So I had this huge format camera, and lenses that you would tape onto the front to get this macro, and you had to figure out all the bellows factors and everything else, and macro work. And I drove. I watched them bury the Constitution on Friday, May 1st, and I said, "Well, it's another demonstration, another symbolic demonstration about the Cambodian invasion," and watched that happen. Said, "I'm not even going to process this." I got in my Volkswagen and drove Pennsylvania and started. It was a 5-hour drive, and I wanted to get a good night's sleep and get up early in the morning and start that macro stuff. And somewhere around noon, I think I was going to have lunch, and I turned on the caller radio and heard about this demonstration. I was only about 30 miles from Penn State University at this time, and it said about this burning of the ROTC building and demonstration, and it was AM radio, I could barely hear it, and it's something about Penn State, and I said, "Wow, Penn State, wow, something must have really happened." And so I listened harder, and it said Kent State. And so I finished that work, slept, I went in Sunday came back to campus that Sunday to see, like students playing. It was a big commuter campus, to see students playing Frisbee with National Guardsmen on the main campus. And the curfew was in place. There was the remnants of the burnout ROTC building. all the I had 3 photographer roommates, sharing an apartment, and they all been working for major publications, or like U.S. News and Report, Newsweek. Howard Ruffner, the editor of Yearbook, was hired by Time Life, Life magazine. And of all the photographers on the university student staff, I think I had the most experience
So you
as a
turned
photographer, but I had no job.
you turned around the car when you heard about the Kent State, and you went back to Kent State.
Yeah, but everything, that was Sunday. I came back Sunday afternoon. And it was, as far as I was concerned, the biggest story of my college career. It was over. I mean, I was thoroughly depressed. I mean, everybody else was working and had the dream assignment, I mean, you had the governor coming in who was running for the Senate, Governor Rhodes, with his brown shirt speech. You had all this, this thing started Friday night, burning the ROTC building. You had all this trouble on Saturday. There was even, and Sunday, because of the curfew, I remember standing off. I had to get off campus. I couldn't get back into the labs. We couldn't open up the labs until 8 a.m. And I was just feeling so depressed because I had missed everything, literally missed everything. And standing on a corner, talking with other people that lived in that apartment complex, we were just standing there and listening to shouts and stuff going on campus in the darkness. And then all of a sudden, a jeep went by us and pepper gas was like one of those mosquito foggers. And we're like, what the heck was that all about? We weren't, we weren't even on campus. We were across the street from campus and got gas. So we all sort of dispersed and cleared that up. And I remember opening up the labs and just, everyone sort of saying, "Oh, you should have been here. You missed, this, and you missed that, and you missed this." And you had to have a press pass that was issued, by the university or whoever was in charge, which was no one really knew who was in charge, it seemed like. And so I had 2 great professors, and I opened the labs from 8 and worked from 8 until noon. And this rally was supposed to take place at noon. I'm going like, great, everything's over. They're going to have another rally. And the students were talking about student strike. And I said, oh, that could be interesting. I was sort of a student, I studied student history and looked at the student movement in Nazi Germany, and said, wow, that was a classic cultural thing, but then it was quickly shut down. And I said, for America, they have this now campuses all over the United States were sort of not inflamed, but protesting against the expansion of this war. White House was calling it the Cambodian incursion, and we're calling it an invasion. It was the typical semantic thing in the Times. And the 2 professors that I had, one was Henry Beck, who was an ex-World War II aerial reconnaissance guy and taught us all the weird stuff of photography. And I had Charlie Brill, who was a working photojournalist. And at different times that morning, he said, well, you're going to go to the demonstration? You're going to go cover the demonstration? I go, what's the point? It's over. And they both brought up to me in a different way that the story has now changed. It's not about Kent State and the burning of the ROTC building, but student protest in America. And I said, oh, this is, okay. You've piqued my interest. I needed to get out of these doldrums. So I said, all right, we close the labs from 12 to 1. I'll go out there and look at this demonstration for 20 minutes and maybe grab some lunch and come back, change the chemistry in the print rooms and see if I can find something that says student protests in America. So that was my self-assignment, my goal to do that afternoon. And I went out there and I was down by the National Guard and had a line around the front of the ROTC building, went back to the students, went back down to the Guard, and just said, there was this distance of a football field seen between the 2 groups. And I'm starting to remember all my Eddie Adams, my Robert Capa stuff. If you're not close enough, your pictures aren't good enough and all this stuff. And I was just shaking my head saying, wow, what a crazy assignment this is. I don't even have long lenses to pull the groups together. And I ran into Howard, like I said, he was our editor of the yearbook, and we all liked Howard because he had every lens I think you could get because he was ex-Air Force and was able to buy all this stuff either in Hong Kong or Singapore, wherever the place was. If you came back from the Southeast Asia tour where you could get great deals on camera stuff. So he had everything. And I told him, all I got is this crazy wide angle. This is the dumbest thing. The other lenses have been taken. He said, well, here, take this 43 to 86, a normal lens, partial, just in the normalcy range of 35 millimeter. And so that's what I used. And Howard was great that way. So finally there was the tear gas barrages back and forth. It was a windy day, May day, in northern Ohio. Tear gas didn't hang around. And finally the guards started a movement, across the commons. And as they did, the students, I would say there was a core of protesters, but then there was a whole majority of students that were just going to see what happened. And also they wanted to see if there'd be a student strike because of what was going on. I mean, it was a clamped down university. I think curfews at 7. You couldn't walk in groups of more than 2. It was getting into finals week, and everybody was back from their weekend away. So I stuck with my gun. I followed a group of soldiers when they got to Taylor Hall where I worked. I mean, this was a convenient thing to cover. It was literally outside the building I worked in. And so there was a main body of guardsmen, I'd say about 100. They went to the right of the building from the commons, and there was a smaller group, maybe a squad size, 8, 9, 10, and it was led by a sergeant with a nice nightstick. And I said, you know what, I want to follow this sergeant, and I think he's got he's looking for someone to hit with his stick, The other ones were soldiers in gas masks and sheath bayonets and M1s, but this guy was a little more agile in terms of he wasn't cluttered with equipment. And I followed his squad. But as he moved up the hill to the left side, the students all gave way. And I was like, well, this is nothing's happening, other than shouts and, the usual back and forth between the two groups. And as I said, well, let's see what happened to the large body of guardsmen that went around the other side of Taylor Hall where I work. And there they were on the practice sunken sort of, it was a rugby field and it was a practice football field at the time. And then I noticed a squad with their rifles pointed to the body of students that were in the parking lot, in amongst the cars, aiming their rifles. And I said, well, I guess they're afraid they're going to be rushed or something. I don't know, but I thought it was this line of guardsmen on their knees pointing their rifles. And I'm watching this, and you see someone on the corner of your eye descend this little embankment with a black flag. And I went, oh, wait a minute. And I looked, and I quickly moved to my left and got this person waving his black flag in the foreground, this rifle line in the background, and then behind that rifle line is probably about 70 to 80 guardsmen just moving around. And I go, wow, this is the best picture I've ever taken. This is student protest in America. I fulfilled my assignment. This is great. I didn't have any idea to publish it, but this was like, wow, I got a nice picture. I got a great picture. It's probably the best picture I've taken since my high school career started, I was very happy with myself just because you could see it develop. You got into the right place and were able to shoot it. The guard reformed, and I'm sort of doing one of those, I hope this protest gets over with because I want to get back and grab some lunch and get the lab ready for the afternoon session. And I had I think I had a class that afternoon. And the guard reformed and marched back, returned on the same line of march they had when they left the Burnett ROTC building. And I was walking up the sidewalk and watched the guard disappear. And I was in no hurry because I was basically walking back to work. And there were students in front of me, and they were yelling. There was some cat calls and all that stuff, some stone throwing from another group. And I said, well, at least the protest is over, and it's 12:20 or something like that. And good deal. But I was real happy with this picture. It was like I said, it was a picture that I'd been wanting to have something that good. And as the guard disappeared over the hill from my line of sight, as I'm climbing the hill, they returned, and began firing. And not only began firing, but you hear a zing go by your ear. And I said, and I'm dodging people who are fleeing and screaming, and not necessarily screaming out loud, but oh my God, And I'm dodging them because I want to get a picture of the guard firing, and I got the camera, and so I never got that picture because as I was bringing the camera up, I see this gun go off. Everything happens in an instant. The gun goes off. The metal sculpture in front of me explodes into a cloud of rust. It's like 20 feet tall. And a chunk of bark comes off the tree, all in my line of sight. Boom, boom, boom. And I went, oh, God, that some guy's using live ammunition. And I said, oh, thank God I wasn't close, because the other guys, if they're firing blanks, the wadding could put your eye out, or something like that. And then I realized, oh my God, they were all using live ammunition. And I was the only idiot that it seemed like in the area that never hit the ground. I quickly shot a picture of looked like an officer stopping the shooting and then reforming that group. And I knew there were people wounded in front of me and into my right by that metal sculpture and by that tree. And I knew bullets went by my head. And I turned to my left to see what was happening. And as you do that slow pan, I saw people on the ground, and you see weird stuff that you remember, like people trying to hide behind a 4-inch curb or a 2-inch wide tree or a 3-inch wide stop sign shaft. It's just, you see weird things. And as the further I turn, there's this body, and this is seconds after the firing stopped. There's this body on the asphalt, and the blood is literally just flowing. It's almost like a beheading, I would guess. The blood is thick and flowing. And I, for some reason, looked at that and just ran. I just ran down the hill and stopped myself when I got to the hill. When I got parallel to the body, I said, why are you running? The guard had stopped shooting. They're the reformed ranks, and they finally marched away. And so I started taking pictures, and I said, I'm not a doctor, but that person's dead. I knew that people were wounded in front of me, and I had no idea what the people behind this body of Jeffrey Miller. But on that pavement, I said, well, let me shoot a few frames. And then you see this girl running up the street towards the body. It was the first person to that body, and she knelt down beside it. And of course, I know now this is because of the teaching I had from all old photographers. It was like, I had one camera, and I'm like, man, I'm running out of film. I bulk load my own film, so sometimes I get 34 exposures, sometimes I get 42 exposures. I joke, but it wasn't an exact end. You didn't know where the roll it was going to end, but I knew I was getting near the end of the roll. And I said, you got to change film. This is happening. And I kept walking in a semicircle to get more horizontal to this picture of this person kneeling down by this slain body. And I was like, shoot. And I shot a picture. Boom. And I said, okay, wait. And you could see an emotion building inside this woman. And I was like, shoot. And then was, don't shoot. You're going to run out of film. Shoot. And I was having this debate and moving closer and focusing and moving closer and focusing. And I shoot out with a scream and you shoot. And the debate is over. I don't have to debate it anymore. And you shoot it. I think I cranked the camera one more time and then another half time. And I was out of film. Quickly rewound that roll, scratched that roll, because that was my that was that picture. The other roll I had scratched was my favorite student with the black flag, student protest in America. But now this whole story developed into something unexpected, the shooting. And with that, I stayed with that body because I knew that body was dead. And it seemed like forever before services came to clean that, pick up that body. I had no idea this was the closest person killed. This is at the bottom of the hill on the pavement. And I didn't know that there were people slain further back in that parking lot and even beyond the parking lot. State of the body, just witnessed crazy stuff. People reacting. It's you dream about it every once in a while. You saw things. You saw someone pick up that black flag and dip into the blood of Jeffrey Moore and flare it around, spraying it on people. And then all I remember is walking over that hill trying to figure out why I didn't get killed or shot or wounded. And my initial reaction after that shooting immediately was, am I in shock? Have I been shot and I don't know it? Because I couldn't see how I would have escaped it, to be honest with you. And whatever that is, that was a thing going through my mind. I ended up back in front in the Commons with a group of people because it's now been some time. I mean, I don't know what the time, you lose track of time, and what you think is short is long and vice versa. But the initial radio report, and these are paranoid times of the Nixon years, and the initial radio report said 2 students and 2 guardsmen killed in shootout at Kent State. I mean, we didn't have cell phones. This is the cigarette-sized pocket transistor radio, you're listening to. And you're listening to people as they turn up the volume and everybody looks at each other and went, ooh, this is strange. So I'm with that group. And they sent an emissary to the guard that did the shooting and say, why did you shoot? And the answer came back from the general or whoever it was. Said, if you don't disperse, we're going to shoot again. No one moved. And then there was this plea going on with Dr. Glenn Frank. And I think there was, trying to think of the other professors, a lot of grad students begging us to leave that Commons area. And like an idiot, I mean, being shot at the first time was I had no idea. But this time the idea that you're staying with these people is now starting to just weigh upon everybody. That was the word, that they're going to shoot again, and no one left. So, and while this, I think someone asked for time, and these wonderful professors got on and started pleading with the crowd to leave. And while this was going on, a contingent of guardsmen that were in another part of campus showed up and surrounded the group. And it's sort of their presence alone, so you're on both sides, surrounded by helmeted armed National Guardsmen, let everyone escape, stage right to the tennis courts. And that's how the day ended. I mean, that's how the day ended on campus, with the same professors that were begging you to leave now telling you, I couldn't even get back in the building. I think the things were locked. Campus is closed. The university is shut down. See you later. Bye. And I didn't know what to do. I couldn't get even back in my building. So I think I went to my car, and I had the film, and I had my camera, and my camera bag was an old gas mask bag from World War II. I only had one camera and 2 lenses. And to get back to my apartment, which literally was off campus, as the crow flies, maybe 300, not even that, maybe 250 yards. To get there, I had to drive like this loop all the way around the back campus because that part was closed also. So I get in my car, Volkswagen, I go down the main highway from Kent to Ravenna. I'm looking at a National Guardsman in lineman boots on a telephone pole, and I'm watching this, and as I'm driving slowly by him, the phone line is lopped and comes down. And I went, oh, that's not a good sign either. The radio is still blaring, 2 students, 2 guardsmen killed in shootout, made it sound like a gun battle, okay, corral, whatever. I'm looking at a phone line being dropped. It's not the electrical line, it's the phone line. And I get to my apartment, I throw in some clothes, and I said, if I wasn't paranoid before, I am now. I hid the film in the car, put in some other film in my camera bag, and I said, I'm going to drive to, I would have went to the Akron Beacon Journal, but I didn't trust that. I didn't trust being in Ohio. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go home. I'm just going to go home. I'm going to drive home and call my paper and see if they have any suggestions, because it's still saying 2 guardsmen, 2 students killed. And I'm like, you see the phone line go down, you still hear this erroneous radio report, and you say, I just want, they might be looking for me. Yeah. I mean, that was
by that you mean the U.S. government, right?
Yes, or anybody. I don't know. And so,
were they trying to control the message? You figured that's why they were cutting the phone lines, or
I think it was just bad journalism. I don't think anybody really knew. I think there was someone called the hospital and said, "Oh, we have 2 guardsmen here." I think it was a guardsman that had a heart attack. I mean, the guardsmen had been out for 2 weeks on a trucker strike and living in trucks and tents or whatever. I don't know where they were living. The bottom line is, someone at the hospital said, I think someone maybe from the WKSU, or I don't know, the college radio station, called the hospital and said, "So what do you have?" Well, we have 2, and they were still collecting body. So he said, "What's coming in the emergency room?" Well, we have two students and 2 guardsmen. Now there were 9 students wounded, besides the 4 killed. So that's what I think it was. I think it was an erroneous report that stood for a long time. And the sad part is it was picked up by everyone. So there was it seemed to take forever for have that. I mean, I didn't get back to Pennsylvania till around 5 o'clock, 5:30, to the newspaper. And that was still pretty much the story, and evening news was approaching, and all of a sudden someone was saying, well, that might not be the case. And so I on the turnpike at the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
Now you still didn't know what you had, correct? You still didn't know whether you had that shot or not, or you hadn't seen that shot yet. You hadn't.
No, I hadn't. Well, I knew I started the day with 6 rolls of film in my right pocket, and put them through the camera, and ended up with 6 rolls of film in my left pocket. I'm still, of course, there's a roll in the camera, and I remember getting to the turnpike rest stop, and I called the paper collect, and I was worried I was going to make toll money. Anyhow, my boss picked up and accepted the call, and his first question, he said, "Did you get anything?" And I had to say, "I think so," because now that he asked the question, I couldn't remember shooting the pictures. I remember seeing pictures, but I couldn't remember shooting the picture. I don't know. I'm going to find out later as a professional that's the condition you want to be in, more or less. Everything is automatic.
The training kicks in and you just start snapping because you know it's the right time. You just don't remember.
Yes.
You're not thinking.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and it's in my age, you don't remember the pictures you take, you remember the pictures you missed. So that's another thing. But anyhow, I get to the paper, they help me out. The first thing is that, well, they don't have the wet chemistry. They got a Versamet. They have a new machine. And I went, oh, God, I'm going to put this film in through a machine. Never done that. And so we took one of the lesser roles, the last role I shot of being exhorted to leave campus. And everything looked fine. We put the Mary Vecchio roll through, the student over the body, and then we put the Alien Camp 4 roll through the student with the black flag. And as this is happening, it's one sort of thing after another, difficulty. The publisher of the paper shows up and said, "Oh, this will be great. We'll hold it for tomorrow's paper." And I went, "What? It's a circulation of 35,000. This is, it's not competing with the New York Times or Washington Post. I mean, come on, or LA Times." And so I had this big argument, and I said, "No, we got to get this out. No one believes this happened. They're still talking about 2 students, 2 guardsmen killed in a shootout. That's not what happened." And it was, I was trying to describe it as from the hilltop, and they were shooting down, and to ameliorate the whole deal, I said, "Look, how about if we put the photos out and we put the name of the Toronto Valley Daily News and Daily Dispatch in the caption?" And that was the negotiation where we ended up, and they let me go ahead with it. He was pissed off. My boss was pissed off, but I still said these pictures had to get out, And so this is the first time I ever transmitted a photo, but this is analog days. I don't care what was going on in the world. Physically, you could, in a 24-hour cycle, you could maybe move 100, if you're really good, 130 pictures. Right? This is wire service time. Every picture took about 8 to 12 minutes. Captions, had to have captions on it. If it was a color project, it took 3 transmissions. The bottom line is, and everybody, I mean, if you scheduled for a wire service, the paper will say, well, enough about that plane crash. I need sports. I need features. I need these other photos, to fill up my paper, my newspaper. So this was all run with a very tight network, leasing, coast to coast, and you had regional wires and sectional things and everything else. And so trying to schedule a picture was damn near impossible because I kept calling in New York, or whoever was answering my schedule, saying, would you stop interrupting us with your TA? You had to use a call letter of where your paper was, and ours was TAR1. The 3-letter call letter meant you were a newspaper. If it was a 2-letter call letter, you were a network hub. Chicago would be CX, LA was LX, New York was NY, and anything else had 3 letters. It was TO was for Toronto, PHO was for Philly, something like that. And any Philadelphia paper, like a PHX or something. The bottom line is, every time you tried to schedule, and they only had a few minutes of talk, and then the next picture would come. And this guy sort of yelled at me, and he said, where are you? And what are you doing? And I said, look, I'm in Western Pennsylvania, and I have pictures from Kent State. And he says, how far are you from Kent State? And I said, about 140 miles. And he says, look, kid, right? He was a kid. He says, look, just stop interrupting me. Why don't you call me on an LD line? Here's my number. Call me, and we'll discuss what we have. And I said, well, it's a good picture. I think it's a good picture. I think it's a really good picture. And he says, oh, yeah, that's what everybody says. And he says, we're taking 10 photos. And after those 10 photos from the Akron Beacon Journal, we're moving on to baseball. We're going to get into the East Coast games, or and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And I went, okay, whatever. And he said, I'll tell you what, you probably, if you can stay there, I can probably get you on the network probably about 8:30, 9 o'clock. All right, I'll stay. And so what happened in our discussion when I called up and tried to describe this picture to him, the Akron Beacon Journal, in their haste to transmit picture, there was an optical bench, and if your picture dried long or bubbled, or the caption came off, and if it just got the slightest bit out of focus, it just went gray. So that was happening to one of their photos. They were transmitting, and that was happening. So that being said, they said, well, wait a minute, while they re-read or whatever they had to do, put a new caption on that photo, we'll take this TAR1 from Trenton, PA, from a person who says it's about Kent State. And so it was a mirror head machine, I think, invented in the 30s. You had to phase the electric motor, get it up to speed, throw the clutch, it went down a micro groove barrel, and then you had to throw a switch that got it off the and put it on a network. It took it off a phone line and put it on the network, like a Frankenstein switch almost. And so I did that. I thought I did it right. And I ran out to our newsroom because I could watch the picture build, and it did. You could one line at a time, zink, zink, zink. And then when it got into the caption, it was black white, so it was like a picket fence, stick on a picket fence. And you knew you were in the caption. And I went, oh God, thank God we transmitted, we got to the caption, and I turned up the volume on the receiver and looked at the picture, and I said, wow, I got it to the receiver, and it came out of the receiver. And then I turned up the volume, and I was listening for the network, what they wanted to do next, and you just heard that white noise, that shh. Oh God, did I throw the wrong switch? Did I send it to the? You could have sent it to the fax machine in the newsroom. And I said, oh God, I hope I didn't screw up. And as I was thinking about that I screw up, the voice came and said, wow, that's a good picture. Can you do that again? Because we only sent it regionally. We'd like to send it East Coast and then West Coast. And I didn't. They knew what they were doing. I didn't. I just knew how to send a picture again. So we sent that picture. We sent the Alan Canafora picture and several others throughout that evening. And even the UPI guy showed up, Jim Devers from Pittsburgh, and I gave him a photo. It was one of the things I showed you guys with the girl. You can see Mary Vecchio running up the street, and this girl's putting her hands to her head and is looking at the body of her mother. And so that's sort of how that day, I don't think I ever went to sleep. I ended up writing a first person thing. And I can't remember if it rolled into the next day or not, but the next thing, my memory at this age is that I'm at home sleeping, and my mother wakes me. It's about 10:30 in the morning, and I know I've been up all night, and I'm in part of the next day and napping in the dark rooms. And I said, "Mom, what's going on?" She goes, "Well, there are two gentlemen downstairs who want to talk to you." And I said, "Oh, I mean, I'm just waking up. I haven't had a shower, you know." And she goes, "Oh, it's okay. I gave them cake and coffee, and you got a little bit of time." And I said, "Well, who are they?" And she goes, "Well, they said they were with the FBI." So I go down and and it's two guys with the FBI, and they got their thing, and I asked for ID, and they had it, and they took my statement, and I'll bet they were there for 4 hours, and they wrote every word, and to this day I still have that tone. I'm glad they did that, because that was the best thing they could have done, because my memory was fresh, the sequence was fresh, everything, and did it. And so it had to be like maybe a Wednesday, because they said, "You have any plans to leave this country?" And I go, "Well, I'm going to the airport on Friday." I had somewhere had been booked on a talk show in Chicago who promised me that if I got on a plane at 11 o'clock in Pittsburgh, I would be on this talk show in the afternoon, and I would be home for a late evening dinner in Pittsburgh. And I said, "Great." So I went, and I was young and stupid, and I went on this talk show, and they looked at me, and I said, "Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Chicago on Friday." But they promised me, I think the show airs at 2:30 or 3. It's an afternoon talk over in Chicago, and I'm supposed to be on a flight back from O'Hare at 4:30, 5 o'clock, and they have cars for me and everything. And they just nodded their head. So I'm driving my Volkswagen to the airport on Friday, and those two guys are in my rearview mirror. And I try to, when I talk about Kent State, I try to talk about the paranoia of the time. Because people will say, "Well, how come you didn't get the name of the people or their ages or things like that?" And I said, "You don't understand. To wear a camera at that time was difficult. Law enforcement or anyone thought you were there for the police brutality photo. Anyone else thought you were there working. You were an agent for the government. So you as a photographer were never welcomed, unless someone really knew you and knew you worked for the student newspaper or the yearbook or something like that. But basically, being a photographer, even during the Kent State thing, even while I was shooting the body of Jeffrey Miller, people were screaming in your ear, "What kind of pig am I to shoot this?" And
wow. So
have
you actually became a target. You were a target yourself just because of the camera.
Yeah. Right. Well, and the other thing is, we've just gotten finished with Trump, and you said I had people saying, "I never realized how crazy America is." And I said, "I did." I said, "We had to take our phone off the hook for 2 months in my home because we get the weirdest, strangest phone calls. Your son was shot against state voters. It's all a lie. You all made it up." And it would go on all night long. Crazy people calling my parents, and we couldn't unplug the phone. We just took the receiver off, and every night for probably well into August.
And John, we're about the same age, I think. Me and you are about the same age. I'll be 74 in a week, so you're about 73, 72, around there.
I'll be 74 in August. Yeah.
Yeah, we're about the same age. And I'm looking back at 69. I was actually on the Laotian border in 69 when I saw your famous photograph. And I'm thinking along lines of, I mean, there was civil rights, there was the war, protesting against the war, protesting against Cambodia. Would you have been a political activist had you not have a camera? Would you have been out there anyway? I mean, were you political? I mean, you're a photojournalist, so obviously you were.
I tell people, I said, when I started college, I came from Western PA, and someone said, "What's that mean?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what it means. Your heroes were either athletes or stories from World War II. Right? I mean, for a steelworker's son, for your birthday, what do you want? I want to go to Saul's Army and Navy. I want I want the belt, with the canteen and the first aid kit you could get for a buck and a half, from maybe it was Korean War by then, but whatever. And that was the thing. You played Army, you played war, And the first inkling of it is my older cousin was one of those Pershing rifle kind of guys, and became a second lieutenant, went to Vietnam, and of course I always wanted him to regale me with stories. He goes, "It's not what you think. It's not what you think." What do you mean? It's not what you think? He said, "It's not what our fathers fought in." I said, what do you mean? And he says, "Well, I got a security detail around Da Nang. I'm supposed to leave so much stuff that they can pilfer, because if they can't pilfer small arms, ammunition, they could just blow it up." And I went, "What?" I mean, weird things, was coming back from the war. You already had your two high school classmates, killed in the Vietnam War. So currently my best friend, who we became best friends through the AP, but when we discuss our lives, I said, "Where were you during the Cambodian incursion?" He says, "I'll tell you where I was. I was on a carrier, but they yanked me off the carrier because I was in photo recon. I'm the one that loaded the cameras on the reconnaissance jets. And when they started the invasion into Cambodia, they pulled Air Force, Army, Marines, Navy, anybody that did photo recon all went to Da Nang, where they could make sure no photo got out that they didn't want to get out." And so there, you were talking about you were on the border. He was there in Da Nang, and because of that, and because of the amount of time, boots on the ground he had in Da Nang, he actually now gets benefits, even though he was in the Navy, because of his time in photo recon on the base when they collected everyone for the bombing surveillance photo.
Now, in '69, because of the misinformation that was floating around with the two guardsmen, two students shot.
70.
70, okay, I'm sorry, 70. I get the impression that even back then, journalism was like, get it first, don't worry about getting it right. Let's get it first. Let's just get it out there. We don't want to be lost.
Well, I think maybe that was it, but I always liked the AP because it was always about accuracy. They didn't even like you using adjectives. That's not your job. Your job is to tell the truth as you see it. And I sort of liked that. And my mentor, I have to admit, with that small paper, as small as it was, it had a great correspondent from it. Eddie Adams he has the photo of the street execution in Saigon. General Luan shooting the handcuffed terrorist in the head.
Yeah.
And amazing photo. I mean, I knew his family. I knew him. He'd come back to that paper. He knew a lot of the editors, and I'd get him to review my photos. This is long before Kent State. This is like 67, 68, 69. And so it sort of had that connection. But getting back to those stories, the longer I stayed in school, the more I could see that the war was, you start looking at the facts and the different languages and how many different tribes there were in Vietnam and all this stuff. You go, oh my God, this is an impossible task to win. Well, anyhow, yeah, my view did change, but I was still studying to be a journalist and trying to give fair shake to every side.
I think the three most iconic photos of that era, obviously, are the Kent State photo, the girl burning in Vietnam, running down the street naked, burning, and then
Nick that photo, yeah.
Yep.
Nick is another friend of Eddie Adams too. I mean, that was his brother was killed, and Nick actually he was a darkroom tech and picked up his brother's cameras and was an AP photographer. I mean, he's still around the LA area. Nick
Wow.
is a great guy.
What was it like for you to win the Pulitzer Prize for the Kent State photo?
It was always strange for me, Frank, because it wasn't like I was a journalist said, "Oh, the place to be is at Kent State." I mean, this literally happened in my lap. I mean, and I was a student. I mean, it's look, there's not an arm's length difference between Jeffrey Miller and myself in distance of where the firing came from, and two different results. As a matter of fact, I was still in school when the Pulitzer announced that almost to the day, a year later, I was at a machine watching it come up over the AP teletype, and I'm looking at a machine telling me I won the Pulitzer, and it was 100 yards from where I shot the picture.
Wow.
I mean, that's strange. I mean, that's what I'm saying. The whole thing is strange, and yeah, I didn't apply. You know, the paper and AP applied for the Pulitzer. I never did. I always it's a double-edged sword. I don't know. Just because of that, somehow those bullets missed me. Got them. Got that guy. Got the tree and the metal sculpture, but it didn't get me. So I've never. That took a long time.
Yeah.
The process, but the paper applied for the Pulitzer, not you.
Yeah.
The paper was hip to all those things. They were probably wanting to get the publicity and the praise.
Oh yeah, no, that was on their banner.
Yeah.
Pulitzer Prize winning paper, you know, it's
So
45,000 or whatever.
Mary Ann Vecchio, the young girl that was standing over the body, she was 14 years old at the time and had made her way up to Ohio from Florida. Is that correct?
Correct.
Wow. And then you didn't meet her
25 years later.
25 years later. What was that like? And what did you talk about?
Well,
how did it affect her?
In 25 years, you have to deal with the fact of do you have PTSD or not? You never saw her shrink. You know, it was like school's over, come back in the fall, see you later, bye. So it was like the World War II that you just dealt with it. You know, figure it out. And so I kept hearing reports that this woman kept getting arrested. They took her back to Boca Raton. They picked her up in Indianapolis. And she kept seeing quotes that this photo ruined her life. You know, it was stuff you don't get taught.
Yeah.
The weight of a famous photo. Oh, you would like to take a famous photo, but the whole backstory. You know, there's the whole thing. It makes it harder to be a photographer. Snapping the photo once you realize the power of a photo like that. Now, certainly it's greatly diminished in today's day and age, I think, because there are no things to carry. But we met 25 years. And so in 25 years, I got myself into a place like, okay, you survived, deal with that. You took the photo, don't be ashamed of it. And I told myself it was my brother. If that was my brother there, I would have shot the picture. If that was my brother on the ground, I would have shot the picture. I don't have a sister, but if that was my sister, I would have shot the picture. That's what I signed up when I decided to be a photographer, photojournalist, right? And we changed the name, photographer, photojournalist. Photojournalism came into being in about the 60s, you know, because it became a teachable thing. So in 25 years, I figure I finally got it all, you know,
yeah,
in a ball I can handle.
And then
so we go to Emerson University. Yep. Dr. Gregory Payne, thank God, brings her in, and we have this cheerful reunion. And she doesn't really hate me, which was a great thing to hear. And she understood what a photographer had to do and everything else. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm not pleased with. I'm not necessarily pleased with myself, and I'm saying, "Oh, thank God, this didn't get into something ugly." And I'm listening to this woman talk. They get her to talk after all these years, and as I'm listening, and I'm like I say, I'm not smug, but I've contained it. You know, I know I know I've been asked just about every question or scenario and thought it out. She starts to speak 25 years after the picture. And suddenly she describes herself as this nurse Nancy who thought she could really help that person. I mean, and it dawns on me, had she not been that young, she would have never got that close to the body. I have pictures before her getting close to the body of other people sort of circling the body, but never getting close to it. They recognize that person's dead. You know, I'm not getting near. I mean, they stood in horror and looked at it and all that stuff, but she went right up to it. And I think it was because she thought she could help. You know, she thought she could. If I do the right thing, I might save this person's life. And it was her youth. It was the fact that she was 14 and not 18, or you know, older as the rest of us in that.
And it was also the fact that she was 14 that the picture had the impact it had, right? I mean, the fact that she was.
If you've seen it, you know, you look at her and you can't say, "Well, that's a 14-year-old." I mean, she was as tall and as anyone else I was going to school with. You know.
Yeah. Plus,
I had no clue that she was that young.
Yes. Plus, you would think that she was a Kent State student.
Right. Exactly.
Rather than a 14-year-old.
So. She had a T-shirt said "slave" on it. You know, a little daisy on the jeans.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was pan or embroidered. You know.
But that's the assumption that I made when I saw the photo, was that as a Kent State student, as a girl, leaning over the body.
I honestly identified her as my boss told me, identify her as a co-ed.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
You said something before as you were telling us a story about as a journalist, as a photojournalist, what you signed up for. She was on the, Jeffrey was on the ground, and you took the picture. That's what you're trained to do. And if you had been able to get mouth to mouth, your job still would have been to take that picture. The greater good. I mean, it's not about Jeffrey anymore, right? I mean, is that the way you feel now?
Well, I think today I'd probably help the person if I knew I could help.
Right.
I mean, this like I said, I stayed with Jeffrey Miller because I knew he was dead. I have pictures. I probably didn't send you guys, but those people that were wounded up behind the metal sculpture, people formed a protective circle around them. You know, people formed a protective corridor, so the ambulance could come or first aid people. But Jeffrey Miller was that laying there on the road like roadkill. Everyone knew that this needs to be cleaned up, not helped.
Considering you were only 22 or 21 around that time, and I'm really curious, when I look back now, I look at kids at West Point, I see them as 18, 19-year-old children, 20-year-old kids, because I'm obviously 74. Did you see the National Guard as being as young as the students in your perception now? Did they seem like kids to you?
No, the sad part is the guard that did the shooting were totally masked, helmeted, never saw a face. You could have been Star Wars stormtroopers. Right? The people, the group that came and surrounded us to end the day, they showed up in just helmets and rifles and fatigues. Then you looked at him, you went, wait, this guy's in my class, right? Yeah, you saw that they were not. You saw that they were your age.
Wow. So, John, after Kent State, how did you continue your career? What could you do to top that? And then how did that affect your ideology? And how did you approach life after that?
Well, I think what happened is that I stayed in school. In that August, a year later, I still hadn't graduated. And Hal Buell of the AP said, I have an opening in Chicago. Would you like the job? And I went, of course I would. So I went to my dean and I said, look, I got to take this job. There's like AP has 52 photographers, and to be one of that, it would be a great thing. So I went to Chicago. I left school, went to Chicago. And from Chicago, I went down and opened up the Springfield, Illinois Bureau, which I covered State House for a number of years, which was, wow, what a state to cover the State House in Illinois with the original Mayor Daley running the city. And that was a real eye-opener for me, coming out of college, out of the sling and everything else. But number one, it was hard. I think I had maybe 3 job offers. Nothing outlandish, nothing outstanding. Plus, I knew that I was young and I still needed more experience on a daily basis. I'm working different stories. And I really liked working for the AP for that philosophical reason, is that it had to be true and honest and things like that. And my heroes were in the AP, Associated Press. And the Associated Press was a big deal, it seemed to me back then. And so I went to Chicago, I worked, and then I think my second month of work in Chicago, the dean that did so much for me, Mervyn Perry, called me up and said, "Hey, I meant to ask you, did you put in for graduation for fall?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And he says, "Why not?" I said, "Well, I need to discuss it with an advisor. He said, "Well, how many hours do you have?" And I said, "I think I have 127 hours at the university, 6 hours of incomplete. So I think I have like 121 hours." He goes, "You know, you only need like 92 hours to graduate." Refreshed. And I said, "Really?" And he says, "Well, where are all those hours?" And I said, "Well, life sciences. I was good in biology, zoology, parasitology. I was good. You know, I was getting A's and B's in there, mostly A's, and D's in chemistry and math." And he goes, "Wait a minute." He said, "Let me call you back." So he called me back. He says, "You're going to graduate in the winter of '72. You're getting a degree in photo illustration with a strong background in medical photography."
Wow.
And that's that.
And that's the name of that tune. Yes.
So you went on to have a brilliant career with the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Baltimore Evening Sun, Newsweek magazine, and when I met you, you were the head of photography for CBS.
I was near the head. I wasn't quite the head.
You were near the head of.
Yes.
A lot nearer than most people get. That's for sure.
And I'll tell you what, that was the best gig, Frank. That really was. I didn't realize how much I had an affinity for some problem solving in public relations and publicity, and I loved every job I did for 25 years there. And that was just so great.
What were some of the shows that you worked on for CBS?
Well, we did. Well, let me see. We had the first. Well, the main kick for me was always Letterman, and then the Blue Bloods. And they both treated me like family. It was just like you were part. They never saw me as being a CBS employee. It was like I was part of their show.
What was Letterman like?
He was great. He was quirky and great and fun, and I had fun with him. I knew that he had. I was able to study people. I mean, a little bit, and by that I mean, I knew that he really didn't like having his picture taken. And if you had to take his picture, the best he could give you is maybe 10 looks, and he's done. And he starts getting 1,000-yard stare or 100, whatever you want to call it, and starts making faces, and he just doesn't do it. So I think what happened is I got called and says, "Dave would like to have a headshot taken, and want to know if you can do it." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I can do it. What are you going to do? Can you do it after the show?" "Glad to do it after the show." So we go through this whole rigmarole. We go up to his office, and I go in, and I set up a light, and I do everything, and I have this. Jeff stops my assistant. I get Jeff in there, and I put Jeff in there. And I said, "Look this way," and I go, "Everything's good. Let's do it." And so Dave came in, and I said, "Dave, just if you stand there, I'll take your picture. You just need a headshot, right? Passport, something like that." "Yeah, just passport." He goes, "Yeah, okay." Stood there and shot one picture. Said, "That's great." He says, "You're done?" I said, "Yeah, I'm done." You know, So he made me. So that's how it started. He made me take more pictures. He couldn't believe that I only wanted to take one picture.
That reminds me of a story with Sinatra. Sinatra was famous for being a one taker, and I was doing some photos with Rickles and Sinatra, and they took one picture of Sinatra, and he said thank you, and he walked off. And then he goes, they said, Frank, where you going? We got to take more pictures. He goes, how many are you going to use? One. You got it.
See ya.
You got it. That's correct.
No, so Dave, I'll tell you what, I did a lot of stuff for Dave, did a lot of stuff for him personally, and no matter what I did, you always went like first class. You know, it was such a joy. And I'm not one of those. I knew he hated Look This Way, Baby, and all that kind of stuff, which I never did. You know, it was always about just getting the picture. I know you hate this. Let's make it. These are my ideas, and look. I know you want to be done with it, but look at this photo. Thank God for digital photography, because then you could go up and say, look at this. You don't want to look like this. You got to give me something else, you know, and stuff like that. So I think that was part of it. The other part of it is, I think, you know, you have those moments every once in a while, like Kent State. And then I think the thing with Dave was, a new boss at CBS. And they totally forgot it was Dave's anniversary, birthday, contract. It was a big deal. Then all of a sudden, this thing blew up within 24 hours that possibly Dave may sign with ABC or go to another network. And I was covering the show. I didn't cover every day. I covered like twice a week, and depending on the guests and all that stuff. And so I went backstage and I saw Dave's assistant, and I just happened to, I said, wow, I said, I didn't realize that this sounds a big deal. I hope I'm not causing too much trouble today. And she looked at me, she says, well, he's not going to go anywhere. He likes the fact that it's all being buzzed about, but he's not going to go anywhere. He's like everybody else. And he's comfortable where he is, and he's doing what he wants. He's not going to move unless it's something crazy. So I went back to my office, you know, which was only 2 blocks away. And the first person I run into is the head of publicity. He says, where are you? And I said, well, I was at the Late Show. He goes, did you see Dave? And I said, yeah. Did he say anything to you? I go, no. Well, did you hear anything? Is he going to go to ABC or anything? No, he's not going to go to ABC. He goes, wait a minute. What makes you say that? And I said, well, that's the vibe I got from his office. You know, we were up there discussing some photos. And I was grabbed. I was rushed into the big boss's office. Tell him exactly what you told me. So that's what I did. And so, long story short, the big boss thought I was a genius because I didn't I didn't have anything to do with it.
And when we met, you were a photographer on Murphy Brown in New York, and then shortly after that, you sort of retired. And I called you or dropped you a note or something when I saw you were shooting Blue Bloods, and you said they called me out of retirement. So
they did. I've been on Blue Blood, and it's the same thing with that's another family. I don't know what, you know. I got along with everyone there, and even though there was some difficult people, I got along with them. And it was a question of what's your beef and how can I help. And I think one thing always to my benefit is I was always quick with people, and not only quick, rude. If I need a photo from them, I didn't hold them up for.
You don't waste that time.
An hour and a half, you know. And if I say, hey, I need you for 5 minutes, and I'd release them after 3, I was always golden.
Yeah, you were great on Murphy because we had Hillary Clinton on the show one day, and, you know, we were told no photos with Mrs. Clinton, but she was delightful, and she took photos with everybody, and John took a lot of those photos, and he was ready with the camera, boy. Click, 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 click. We got some great photos out of that memories as well.
That's great.
Get the moment. I get the moment. Get it. Don't waste time.
Yeah. We got to close.
Her husband showed up at Blue Bloods, by the way.
Oh yeah.
He he didn't release the photos, but he was there to discuss the stop and frisk and how he thought the show did justice to that question.
And Selick's a good guy?
He's like Letterman to me. I mean, I've never been treated badly by him.
Great.
Matter of fact, yes, I'm treated great by Tom Selleck. I just think it's and like anything, Frank, if the main man likes you,
yep,
the whole production likes you.
That's it. Well, John, you've been a terrific guest. Billy, in closing, do you have any questions you want to?
No, I'm just delighted you came on too, John. You were a terrific guest, and I want to thank you for that photo, because I think that photo had as much to do with ending the Vietnam War as certainly a lot more than the invasion of Cambodia did. So I want to thank you for that, because I was over there and I was delighted to get back with all my.
Well, you know what? Thank you for being there. To be honest with you, I mean, I had a lot coming from Western PA. I had a lot of friends there.
I grew up the same era you did, and I watched all the World War II movies from Back to Bataan to all of them, and I felt the same way you did, which is why I joined. I really thought we were supposed to be stopping communism. That was the deal.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I went. But thank you for taking that photo, and thank you for the integrity of being a photojournalist and getting things out there.
Yeah, that's a great word, John. Thank you for your integrity.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Well,
I hope I wasn't too boring.
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. Thank you very much.
You held our job easy. You held our rapt attention. That's for sure. Thank you so much, John. Be well.
Thank you, guys.
I hope to see you soon.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
You bet.
Let me know when you're in town.
You bet. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was very fascinating.
What a great guy.
Yeah, and the idea that when all of that's going down, it's almost like I talk about when there's a fire going on, your training kicks in. I imagine like combat, your training kicks in. You can't think or analyze anything. It just click, click, click. And to think he got those photos with his last two shots.
It's we talk about luck. We talk about luck.
Lucky he didn't get shot.
Lucky he didn't take his ear off.
Yeah. I mean, lucky he didn't get shot.
They thought they were firing blanks. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, no one knows who shot Jeffrey Miller, but can you imagine if you were the guy who shot Jeffrey Miller and you knew it? I mean, they were all lined up. They were all shooting everywhere. Can you imagine having to live with that for the rest of your life? Having known you're the guy.
The thing that gets me is he was shot in the mouth.
Well,
I don't know if you're trying to if it's a riot, you're trying to put somebody down. Would you aim for their head? I don't know.
I think it's almost the equivalent of.
Yeah, boo, yeah. You're right. You just chaos and you just shoot. Yeah,
that's what it was.
Yeah,
I mean,
that makes sense.
You keep in mind, 19, 20, 21-year-old National Guardsmen.
And why do you join the National Guard? Because you're looking for a 2-week-a-year gig, and it's a nice weekend gig, and you don't really expect anything like that. Yep. Americans shooting Americans
is crazy
on American soil,
and not in a civil war.
Yeah. Pretty heady stuff.
You're right. Well, can you lighten the mood at all?
Well, we all lost a few friends in the war. No. It's tough to lighten the mood. I don't know where you go.
Why'd you tell us a Vietnam story? One that has a happy ending.
I don't know any happy Vietnam stories.
We don't want any with a happy ending.
Well, okay.
Does it have to have a happy ending?
Yeah. Derek, we don't want to know anything about your happy endings.
That's code for massage parlor.
Yeah. Well, let's.
It was a really good interview. He was a very interesting.
It was a really good interview. It was
John Filo, amazing.
And next week we're going to have Fred Clare on, the former general manager of the Dodgers, who's got a great story as well.
I really loved the caption I had read under one of the pictures, and it said, "Overnight, he made a 14-year-old runaway American girl the most famous unknown person in the world."
Wow.
Everybody knew who she was, but nobody knew who she was.
Right.
Just the face on the page.
Well, thank you, John Filo.
Thank you, John Filo. That's right.
And thank you, Derek.
Thank you, Derek Harris. Thank you, Frank Pace.
Thank you,
Thanks
Billy O'Connor.
for having him on. It was a good guest.
Bye.
Next week's
Bye,
guest,
all.
longtime Dodgers general manager and author of Extra Innings, Fred Clare.
We'll see you next week.